At precisely 7:04 a.m., she arrived. Every morning, without fail. Through snowstorms, through summer haze, through the golden leaves of fall, and the gray mist of spring, the French bulldog walked steadily down the path of Maple Grove Park. Her legs were short, her back stiff from age or maybe heartbreak, but she never hesitated. Locals noticed her, though they never really knew her. She wasn't a stray. Her coat was too well kept, her nails too smooth. She wore a faded pink harness that had clearly been loved once. She didn't bark, didn't chase squirrels or sniff at strangers. She simply walked, determined, with a rhythm that felt sacred. She reached the third bench from the left, right under the weeping elm tree. Always that one. She'd hoist herself up, settle into the same curl, and face the lake. Then she waited. That was it. No begging, no playing, just stillness. Like she was watching for someone long gone, or maybe someone yet to arrive. Joggers would pass, the coffee vendor would nod and place a paper cup beside her, always filled with warm water. And slowly, she became part of the park's morning rhythm. Unmoving, unchanging, the little lady on the bench. But what they didn't see, what no one really noticed, was how her eyes moved. She wasn't just sitting, she was scanning, looking, searching for someone. And the ones who did take a moment to look into those soft, wet eyes saw something they couldn't explain. A kind of sorrow that wasn't just old, it was ancient. The kind of sorrow that waits, that hopes, that remembers, even when everyone else forgets. Rumors started. Some said she was waiting for her owner, who went off to war. Others thought she was just lost, but every theory fell apart when people realized she came from somewhere every morning. She wasn't homeless. She had a place she returned to each night. But that only deepened the mystery, because if she had a home, then why did she spend every morning like this? Why did she walk those same steps? Why did she sit on that same bench? And why, on one cold Tuesday in November, did she suddenly vanish? The silence felt louder that day. When people arrived and saw the empty bench, it was like the park had forgotten to breathe. The little French bulldog, with her sad eyes and quiet grace, was gone. The coffee cart guy, whose name Muddy knew but whose kindness spoke volumes, placed her water cup down anyway, just in case. The old jogger who had passed her every morning for years paused longer than usual, scanning the tree line. His steps, once rhythmic, now stumbled. Something sacred was missing, and everyone felt it, even if they couldn't explain why. Hours passed. No dog, no pink harness. Some said she might have been picked up. Others feared the worst, but no one expected what happened next, because the very next morning, she was back. Her steps were slower now, her leash dragging, her paws mud-caked, but her eyes still held that same timeless ache. She hopped onto the bench, curled up, and resumed her vigil, like she'd never missed a day, only this time someone was watching closer. An old man named Charlie, quiet, observant, a retired postman who noticed the details others didn't. And what he noticed, standing behind the elm tree, chilled him. There were paw prints, but only hers. No human footsteps, no companion. Just a leash, trailing like a shadow behind her. That night, he followed her from a distance. watched her walk 4 blocks through quiet streets, cross without a leash at intersections, and pause at a red brick building with no name. She scratched at the door. A woman answered, and what she said broke something in Charlie's chest. "She's not mine," the woman whispered. "She used to belong to the old lady in 3B, but she passed away last week. Stroke. In her sleep." And just like that, the pieces started to come together. The woman from the building, kind and cautious, let Charlie inside. He wasn't family, but when he explained about the dog, she opened her heart and the door. They entered apartment 3B. Dust hung in the air like suspended memory. The smell of lavender still clung to the curtains, and a single pink dog bed sat near the window. Empty. Charlie scanned the room. Everything was neat, carefully arranged. A shelf of framed photos lined the mantel, each one telling a quiet story. And there, in the center, was a picture that made his heart skip. The woman from the bench. White hair tied in a bun, hands folded on her lap. Beside her sat Pippa, the French bulldog, wearing that same pink harness and the gentlest expression imaginable. There were dozens more photos, some newer, some old and weathered. But in all of them, there was one constant. The bench. The same bench at the park. Charlie asked the woman, "Did she go there often?" She nodded, her voice soft. "Every morning. For almost 10 years, rain or shine." She said it was where her husband proposed. After he died, she just kept going. With Pippa. But one photo stood out. In it, the woman held a bouquet of forget-me-nots. And next to her, someone new, a man in a military uniform. His face blurred by glare, but his hand rested gently on Pippa's head. Charlie picked it up. "That's her son," the woman said. "He died overseas." She never talked about it much. And just like that, the silence around the dog began to speak. Pippa wasn't just loyal. She wasn't just grieving. She was continuing a ritual born from loss, a ritual inherited through love, grief, and unspoken memory. Charlie left that apartment with a lump in his throat and a new understanding in his heart. Pippa was no ordinary dog. She wasn't just waiting. She was remembering. The next morning, Charlie arrived at the park before sunrise. He wanted to see it for himself, to understand the gravity of what this little dog did each day. The sky was still dark when he sat on the bench, his breath misting in the cold air. For a long while, there was only silence. Then, soft, steady pause. She came into view like a ghost slipping through time. That same French bulldog dragging her leash like it was an anchor tied to another life. She paused for just a moment when she saw Charlie, then climbed onto the bench, settled beside him, and looked out at the lake. Not at him, never at him, always the lake, always the horizon. She sighed, and he heard it, not a grunt, not a growl, but a sigh heavy and worn, as if she'd been carrying someone else's sadness too long, and this bench was her place to lay it down. Charlie whispered, "You miss them, don't you?" She didn't look his way, but her head tilted slightly, her ears twitching. She understood. That night, Charlie printed her story on a flyer. Dozens of them. He posted them on trees, at coffee stands, in barber shops. He uploaded it to local Facebook groups, titled it simply, "The Bulldog Who Never Misses a Morning." And it worked. People came. First a few, then dozens, then more. They brought treats, blankets. Some just stood silently, hands in pockets, watching the little bulldog honor someone they'd never met. She became a living memorial, a furry guardian of love that outlasted life itself. But while others watched her from a distance, one man got closer. Not to the dog, to the story. A man who carried a darkness of his own, a man who hadn't smiled in months, who came not to witness, but to disappear. And he chose that very bench. His name was Noah. Though no one knew it yet, he was just a face in the crowd, another pair of eyes watching the dog who never failed to arrive. But his eyes were different, hollow, as if every light inside him had burned out one by one, until all that remained was smoke. He had lost everything, a job, a fiancé, a reason. He came to the bench with a final plan, wrapped in silence and shame. But before he could act, something stopped him. Pippa. She climbed onto the bench, nudging him gently, before curling up beside him. She didn't beg, didn't bark. She just leaned against his side, warm and still. He didn't push her away, and for the first time in months, he didn't feel alone. Minutes passed, then hours. The sun rose and fell again, and Noah returned the next day, then the day after. And each time, the bulldog greeted him, not like a pet, but like a friend who knew, like she had been waiting not just for her own person, but for someone else who needed her now. Noah started talking, not to anyone, just to her. He whispered his regrets, his guilt, his grief. And she listened, never moving, never judging, and slowly, painfully, something shifted. His shoulders softened. His breath came easier. His voice steadied. She never left his side. Noah hadn't spoken to another human in days, yet somehow he found himself talking more and more to the little bulldog who shared his bench. He never asked her to stay. She just did. There was something unspoken between them, like two souls who didn't need words to recognize each other's grief. And while the crowd of curious strangers grew each week, Noah found comfort only in her stillness. He started calling her Pippa. He didn't know that was already her name, the name her old owner whispered every morning while stroking her ears, the name that was once spoken with joy and later with tears. But when Noah said it, something happened. Her ears perked. Her tail twitched ever so slightly. It was the first time she had responded to anything in weeks. He didn't think much of it at first, assuming it was a coincidence. But he tried again the next day, this time with more certainty. Pippa. She lifted her head and looked him in the eyes, and in that tiny moment, barely a breath, something changed. The bench was no longer a place of mourning. It was becoming a place of healing. That same day, someone tried to take her. A woman, well-meaning, maybe, approached with a leash and a smile, claimed she was going to find Pippa a new home, said it wasn't right for her to be alone. Noah stepped in. He didn't yell, didn't argue. He simply said, "She has a home." And Pippa, who had never moved for anyone, turned from the woman and curled back against Noah's leg. The message was clear. She'd chosen him, and in a way, maybe her old owner had too. Maybe the bench wasn't just a memorial. Maybe it was a bridge. Noah knew he couldn't keep visiting the bench forever. Seasons were changing. His job search had restarted. Life was beginning to whisper possibilities again, but he also knew he couldn't leave Pippa behind, not after what they'd shared. So he made a choice. He returned to the park with a proper leash, a name tag, and a small bouquet of forget-me-nots, the same flowers from the photo Charlie had seen in the old woman's apartment. He sat beside her, the morning sun breaking through the trees. For a while, they just sat, two survivors of different storms. Then he whispered, "It's time to come home." She looked at him. Did she understand? No one could say for sure, but when he stood up and extended the leash, she didn't hesitate. She hopped down from the bench, her tiny legs steady, her eyes locked on his. She followed him down the path, not looking back. The bench was no longer her anchor. It had served its purpose, and now it was ready to let go. That evening, as they settled into Noah's small apartment, he set up her new bed by the window, laid out her blanket, filled her bowl. She sniffed everything, circled once, then twice. And then she curled up, not like someone waiting, but like someone who had arrived. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, and at the park, the bench sat empty for the first time in months, but not forgotten. 2 weeks passed before Charlie returned to the park. He wasn't sure what he was expecting. A new stray, a different story, but when he reached the bench, he found something else entirely. A small plaque, freshly installed. Nothing flashy, just a bronze rectangle tucked neatly under the weeping elm tree, right where the dog had always sat. The inscription read, "For the ones who wait, and the ones who keep going anyway, in memory of Pippa and the people she loved." Charlie smiled. Someone had left a bouquet of forget-me-nots beneath it. Someone else had added a framed photo of Pippa curled against Noah's leg, both of them watching the lake together. People still came, not for a dog anymore, but for what she represented. Hope, loyalty, the quiet kind of love that doesn't ask for anything in return. Some came to leave flowers, others brought their own dogs and sat in silence. A few came just to cry. The bench had become more than wood and metal. It had become sacred. And Pippa, she was still very much alive, in every tail wag that lingered, in every breath drawn by someone who thought they were alone, until they weren't. At home, Noah sipped coffee with Pippa at his feet. She'd gained a little weight. Her fur looked shinier now. She still didn't bark much, but she didn't have to. She'd already said everything she needed to, and every morning at exactly 7:04 a.m., she'd pause by the door, wait for him to grab his coat. It was time for their walk, a new path, a new purpose, but always together.